それでは皆様、お待たせいたしました。IMS ジャパンカンファレンス2020 IMS ジャパンセミナーにお参加いただきまして誠にありがとうございます。本日の司会を務めます IMS 協会の IMS 協会よろしくお願いいたします。開催になりまして IMS 協会理事長白井勝彦よりご挨拶申し上げます。白井理事長お願いいたします。
はい、皆様こんにちは。IMS の、IMS ジャパンコンファレンスとこう言ってますけれども、日本 IMS 協会が主催する、コンファレンスによくいらっしゃいました。皆さん大変注目しているところだと思うんですけれども、今回の COVID-19 の世界中のパンデミックということで、日本だけではなくて世界中で、の教育現場あるいは人材育成の目的というようなところでは、オンラインの学習あるいは、オンライン授業というのが非常に、ふんだんに行われるというよりはこれに頼らなければ現実に実行ができない状態になっているということですね。したがって、日本でもこの面でのいろんな技術の応用というのは、他の国に比べて必ずしも、進んでたというわけではないんですけれども、今回、相当、それにキャッチアップしてと言いましょうか、皆さんが学校現場でもあるいはいろいろな研修活動等でも使うようになっているというのが現状ではないかというふうに思う。その中でそれを進めるにあたって非常に重要なのが標準化という問題ですよね。IMS グローバルという組織があって、そこで、これいろいろなシステム、アプリケーション、あるいはそのデータ構造、そういうものに対して、標準化を進めることによって、多くの利用者、あるいはベンダーの方々、そういう方々が、有効にこの教材なり、アプリケーションなりを、共同に利用できるようにしようという動きが、相当以前から行われているわけで、日本 IMS 協会はこの IMS グローバルに参加する団体として、ここで行われて開発されている、技術標準と言いましょうかね、これを、日本にも有効に使えるような状況を作っていこうと、そういう団体として、ずっと活動しているわけです。本日は、こういう状況の中で大変関心度も上がってきておりますので、その中で非常に重要な部分ですね、についてご紹介をし、それについて、またいろいろご質問等々ありましたら、寄せてもらいたいと。IMS グローバルのロバベルが大変張り切って最初の挨拶というよりは、かなり長い、講演的ものを寄せていただきましたし、その後、日本側の講演者が分かりやすくいろいろ紹介してもらえると思いますけれども、その後には、このチーフアーキテクトとして活躍しておられるコリン・スミスさんが、いろいろ質疑応答をやっていただけるということなので、大変内容の充実したコンファレンスになるのではないかというふうに期待しております。ぜひ積極的に、ご発言もいただいて、ご質問があれば、していただきたいと。よろしくお願いいたします。はい。私の話は終わります。
白井理事長ありがとうございました。IMS グローバル特別講演に移ります。講演者はただいま理事長の白井よりご紹介させていただきました通り、IMS グローバル CEO ロブ・アベルより新型コロナウイルス感染拡大教育 ビデオレターの形式でメッセージを用意しております。
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in to my little presentation here. I'm Rob Abel. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the IMS Global Learning Consortium. I'm here to give you an overview of the work of IMS today, but it's a very special time, of course, and so I'm not just going to give you an overview, but I'm going to talk a little bit about what's happening in respect to the COVID-19 pandemic. I wanted to thank the many of you who are watching this that have contributed to the IMS work over the many years of our existence, but especially the last 4 or 5 years, which has been a time when the IMS work has really accelerated substantially. What I'd like to do here is share my screen, or go back to sharing my screen, I should say, and then we'll go through the presentation from there. IMS is a community of organizations and people that have been shaping the future of digital teaching and learning that come from those organizations since its inception in the later half of the 1990s, kind of around the time that the learning management system movement was starting to emerge, particularly in higher ed at that time. I will cover more of who we are and what we're doing as I move ahead in the presentation in some more detail. IMS believes that digital transformation in teaching and learning can and should be led by the educational community, all stakeholders, suppliers, institutions, etc., by working together. And we can not only do that, but we can accelerate our progress together. And the goal of digital transformation is improving the educational experiences really for all stakeholders at scale, not just in a few instances, but really across the ecosystem. And after more than 2 decades at the forefront of the IMS members' work on transformation, currently we feel that sort of falls into 3 buckets that are shown on this presentation here, this chart. The first one is building the foundation for the interoperable and extensible and agile ecosystem for your particular institution. Very, very important to reduce cost and basically give you the versatility you want to move your ed tech environment in the direction you want to move it. Second major bucket is really to enhance learning itself. This is really more advanced use of interoperability that's all about increasing your ability to do various forms of personalized learning, achieve student success, and so forth. And thirdly, there's a very, very exciting area, which is about recognizing achievement using digital technology and helping students leverage those achievements as they further their aspirations in their life. Very, very important work. I'll return to these categories when I talk about some more of the specific IMS work later on, but I wanted to introduce those up front. So who are we in IMS? Who are these organizations? It's basically a very, very diverse group. The leading organizations represented by people who are typically leaders themselves within the organizations and usually across the ecosystem. As of the end of 2019, we have the very precise numbers. These are from our annual report, 6,483 individuals. That's a pretty large community, representing some 260 educational institutions across higher ed and K-12, 370 supplier organizations, 23 state or national education agencies. Now, the members are headquartered in 25 different countries, and you can see a map here, and it is actually a map of the IMS member organizations. In addition to very strong growth in the USA, we're really seeing strong acceleration in Europe now, Japan, and also the Australia, New Zealand region. Education, of course, is quite regional in nature, and so IMS customizes the partnerships in different regions and using different approaches that will work well for those regions. So it's important to understand because different regions are more interested in different sectors, different parts of what IMS is doing and so forth. And we try our best to help the local groups facilitate their own approach to how to organize activities around IMS work. From 2006 forward, IMS began growing at a pretty impressive rate. basically by becoming more market focused. In the last 5 or so years, IMS has added 50 new member organizations a year. Now, the total membership in 2005, when this chart began, after close to a decade of operation already, was 50 members. So that gives you an idea of how impressive the growth is currently. And just as a yardstick, IMS is now nearing roughly the same size as the well-known, probably much better known, World Wide Web Consortium, or W3C. So one of the questions you might ask is, well, why has IMS experienced such strong growth and consistent over the last 14 years? And simply put, it's a committed a membership, and there's commitment among the members to work together to understand what's going on and create the future. And that's very, very powerful. And most importantly, it's very, very purposeful. It's a very serious collaboration, if you'd like to think of it that way. It's not just about creating standards. It's about enabling an open ecosystem. And to do that, you have to focus as much on achieving the adoption and verification across the ecosystem as you do on implementing standards themselves. And we've managed to be very fortunate that our members have been willing to support us in that. Sustainability of the model is one of its most attractive elements. It really is a self-sustaining model. It has to do with how excited and interested and purposeful is the community. And so it's a self-motivating, sort of self-reinforcing motivation to focus the organizations, right? And importantly, the exact timing of the scale-up of needed digital innovations in education and learning is difficult to predict. So it's important to be able to create things and to be able to persevere and sustain for the right time when those innovations are needed in the marketplace. So the proof here is in the ecosystem, meaning the products that are verified to work very well together based on this work. And IMS has put in place a very, very serious testing program that not only keeps getting better every year, but that IMS as an organization and its members stand behind, meaning that if a certified product is having interoperability issues, we will actually work to resolve those issues. So although you do get a marketing logo when passing this program, it's more about providing resources for development and testing to ensure standards are working in practice than it is about marketing per se. And that's one of the things that's differentiated the IMS work versus some other work that's happened in our sector in the past on standards. You know, there's been a lot of great work in IMS over the years. There are about 25 work streams in IMS right now, 500 meetings a year. But occasionally, usually after years of effort, it's clear that something is going to stick and really help enable a fundamental change in the education landscape. And some of those areas are shown here on this and on the next slide. And I've characterized them by one of 5 key innovation areas that we focus on, but also the year that they kind of came into being, so to speak. So you'll see things on here like the original LTI, the original QTI, thin common cartridge, the caliper analytics, one roster. You'll see things here like the competencies in academic standards exchange, open badges version 2, LTI Advantage, and now the comprehensive learner record. These are things that once they have happened, things never went back to the same after they happened. They've made a radical change in the way people thought about products and thought about the ecosystem and how the ecosystem interacts. Most importantly, though, then the track record of effectiveness in IMS is great for the participants because it means that the participants, whether an individual or organization, has a high probability of making an impact and really creating the future in IMS, not just, for instance, writing the standard, but actually seeing that impact occur in the marketplace. All of these accomplishments are detailed in our annual report, which I'll show you how to get to later, I hope. Now, entering into the year 2020, things are looking very promising. Our Learning Impact Conference was planned as usual for May. IMS had decided to pivot to really focusing on a better definition of student success and personalized learning, which are very important, but they're sort of very general terms. And you're seeing that focus here Namely, it's around looking at improving specifically equity, agency, and mastery. And we believe that evolving to the next generation of education will involve, and we're starting this discussion now. We know it's going to be a very, very long-term effort, but please check out the Learning Impact blog. I've been talking about this there on my monthly posts recently, and we'll continue to talk about this if you'd like more interest in the specific area of equity, agency, and mastery and what we mean by that. But of course, the face-to-face conference never happened due to COVID-19. Instead, we decided to create a series of on-demand webinars available to the public, which were designed to glean insights from the market-leading organizations across our membership, really on the impact of the pandemic. And we captured all of the videos so far. We've published 24. There are more coming, by the way. So there are a lot on the IMS website under the Learning Impact On-Demand tab. These include one-on-one interviews, many of which I did, and also panel discussions from experts. The videos cover K-12 and higher ed. We have been told that they are very, very insightful. But the nice thing is we've also created a summary of each one of the webinars and the recordings on the IMS website. So you can actually read the summaries very quickly without having to watch the entire videos. So it's a very, very effective use of your time if you want to take a look at those. Now, so what did we learn from some of those video, from the actual recordings that we did and discussing with IMS members? And of course, we're still learning a lot. But really, kind of what we found out was that, as we all know, switching completely to remote distance online learning happening very fast in some situation, a matter of days, literally. In other cases, maybe just a couple of weeks, but not a long time. And therefore, institutions were in a situation where they happen to be, whether they happen to be prepared or not. And rather than trying to change everything, the best strategy appeared to go with what you know. Try to scale your existing approaches for a fully remote experience rather than trying to change everything all of a sudden. So for those of us that have worked on EdTech for many years, we can say, we can be very proud because the movement to the cloud to focus on enabling certain systems as mission critical 24/7 really paid off. Technology generally scaled very well with a few glitches here and there, and suppliers did a lot to help support things that were needed. But a key success factor, I guess not surprisingly, was practice. Practice makes perfect, they say. And that school districts, for instance, that practice fully remote in the form of digital snow days, even only for a couple of days in a row, or hired institutions that had more sophisticated online offerings, generally did quite well with the pandemic, even with a very rapid pivot. But of course, it was impossible to understand all the ramifications of the long-term teaching and learning at a distance. So having an agile and extensive ecosystem based on open standards for integration into one or more hub systems, for instance, an LMS, was a key strategy, and where the IMS members were able to shine because of what their participation in IMS had helped them put in place over the time of the years that they've been participating. So bottom line is, I have talked about many, many times over the years, sometimes people get tired of me talking about it, is there's a requirement for clear instructional strategy as well as a clear interoperability strategy. One is more, of course, focused on instruction. One is more focused on IT. But both of these go hand in hand and they go together, but you need a strategy. It doesn't just happen by magic. And the institution or programs that had strong foundations in those two areas did well, relatively speaking. There's a great quote I wanted to show you from one of our members, David Goodrum, Oregon State University, that really kind of sums up the importance of having this very, very solid core. And I wanted to say many thanks to David for calling out how IMS has been a major force for good in enabling the interoperable ecosystem. Comments like that, of course, make us feel very well, very good. But, of course, IMS, as I've discussed, is really the members working together. So the members have really themselves to thank for the progress and the support that they're getting out of IMS. Here's a list of 10 items that have definitely been areas of greater focus during the response to the COVID-19 And I would expect these to be focus items in the future because preparedness is obviously going to be key when something like this happens again, but we're also lingering into the effects into the new year. 2021 is most likely. I wanted you to note that there are some positives here, like greater collaboration and empathy, really around the use of faculty using technology. And this has really been great because the reality of this, which might be a little counterintuitive, is that teachers and faculty have become even more important, not less important in these remote learning scenarios. Now, as we go or think about the fall back to school, we're experiencing that right now in the USA, K-12 and higher ed. And clearly the need for agility is universal. No one can be absolutely certain how very splendid delivery scenarios will need to evolve as participants things happen and participants get tested and things can change very, very rapidly again. So this is really kind of some of the lessons learned here in terms of really being able to apply more discipline, but really being able to be agile still. So importantly, the last item, many parents and students have been forced to consider additional alternatives to what they're already doing. For instance, looking at more fully online options. So this has been really opened up a lot of folks' eyes here, and they're trying out new things. And based on how they like them, it may change how they view things permanently going forward. So it's very, very interesting what's happening. Now, beyond the pandemic, I think the really kind of cool thing, about that we were hearing from our members during these on-demand sessions is that IMS has really been perceived as a positive force, not just in helping them get through the pandemic, but that's enabled them, to think about how to evolve, how to use this experience to evolve to these new models of education that actually they've been thinking about for a while. So perhaps more importantly, the IMS member organizations have been empowered now through this experience to really think about in very tangible ways how to accelerate the future of some of the more effective educational delivery models they've been thinking of and learning from this experience. And I actually believe it's going to be very exciting the next 12 to 24 months to see how many of the ideas help accelerate the future of the effective use of educational technology and seeing that as an opportunity. Now, beyond the pandemic, as I mentioned earlier, IMS has a very specific way now of thinking about digital transformation of teaching and learning in terms of falling into these three impact categories or buckets, as I like to call them sometimes. So, IMS also has now a new way to recommend specific interoperability standards and services that institutions should be asking for in the upcoming year. And so by that, I mean the start of the next school year. And we're starting to show that on our website, beginning on this chart, which talks about the most fundamental impact of building of that foundation for diversity and agility and speed and really lowering costs as well. Each one of the relevant IMS standards is discussed here. Now, to build the foundation, the institution should be considering K-12 and higher ed. Which one of these services and standards are appropriate for them and involving them into place, so starting with some and then moving to others. They do not all have to be implemented together. They can be implemented incrementally, and every single one helps in some way. And this is one of the things IMS helps our members with. Now, all of these lists are on the IMS website on the K-12 and the higher education transformation pages, so I'm not going to go through all the details here on these. Now here we see kind of the second bucket and the recommended standards and services that go along with this. This is beyond the foundation. Again, it's enabling more advanced use of your technology ecosystem. So really developing a tech strategy along with the instructional strategy to improve personalized learning and student success. And I hope you'll take a look at these on the IMS website, especially if you're not familiar with some of these and exactly what's going on. And lastly, in terms of beyond the pandemic is the third bucket, which is very exciting. It is about recognizing achievement in ways that we're better to do now. The bottom line is that traditional transcripts are not really fitting the bill, whether it's K-12 or higher ed, in terms of really recognizing everything that a student can do and what they've achieved. And we have a lot of room for improvement there. And different types of interoperable digital records can really help us improve in that area. So what I wanted to do is spend the remaining time, which is not long, with on some of the things that you can expect to see and hear about, kind of a little preview of some things you expect to see in the coming weeks, in the coming months. This is a little bit of a preview, and I hope you appreciate it. I can't spend much time on each, but I'll just kind of hit some of the highlights here. So the first thing is that IMS is expanding a very popular thing called the App Vetting Program, which where human being vets apps to determine the privacy, student data privacy, and security features. And we're actually developing now and going to roll out a certification source, which is namely a seal that is granted if a supplier is willing to self-vet and self-declare and submit evidence after IMS is already vetted. We think this is going to be a very popular program. It's based on the fact that student data privacy issues are becoming much more important now as the use of digital expands, especially the quote-unquote free apps that faculty and teachers may adopt on their own. This program is based on the recently adopted IMS app vetting rubric, which has recently passed the IMS membership, and you should take a look at it if you're not familiar with. Very exciting work, and very much a focus in Europe as well for us in terms of the GDPR. The next one is in the USA, all EdTech participants now are able to take advantage of our free CASE network of digital K-12 learning standards for all 50 states. And this free database of approved state learning standards really changes the game for school districts and suppliers alike in terms of lowering the cost of getting consistent alignments of all the digital resources being used in a school district, across the state, whatever. So other areas of the world could consider doing something similar, leveraging the CASE standard for interoperability of local/national standards and maybe setting up a similar type of network. This CASE network is really now beginning to get adopted now at scale in pockets of the US, and it's really very, very exciting. So you're going to be hearing a lot more about this. Now, IMS has literally just announced a more general availability to the contributing members of some work that's been under development for 3 years now, with some historic collaboration of leading K-12 educational publishers. It was once called One EdTech, but now we are calling it the Ecosystem Accelerator Program. You can find out more information about it and press releases on the IMS website. But in essence, this is software as a service that allows any live endpoint product to characterize its abilities with respect to use of IMS standards, and therefore to be able to check compatibility across the entire ecosystem of products, including those installed at institutions. In other words, you integrate one time, and then we can compare your integration to every other product, every other school district, every other institution that's in the network, essentially. The investment being made here is to get us to go even farther beyond the powerful IMS certification to, in essence, transparently seeing and understanding the gaps in interoperability and save even more time and money, but most of all, make sure that the standards work and are evolving to meet the needs in the marketplace. This is a world first in software interoperability, and we're very proud of it. We're just the beginning of it, but we think it's a very, very important beginning. And now, while IMS will continue to make Caliper easier to implement, better in terms of fitting the needs of both higher ed and K-12, so now we have a broader focus on really enabling a complete analytics architecture. Cornerstone of the work is the emerging Edu API project, which is shown here, a diagram. Essentially, it's a more powerful version of OneRoster, but you will also be hearing more in the coming weeks and months about a projected launch just at the very beginning of this year of something called the Student Learning Data Model, shown here toward the right. And what that's all about is, as we get deeper into the use of data, defining common meanings to data across products is key to enabling analytics at scale. Caliper covers data in motion, but the Student Learning Data Model concerns data at rest and how to interpret it. So this is also very exciting work that's rather new, and you'll be hearing more about it. And one of the most exciting areas, as I said, in IMS right now is the rapid evolution and uptake of our work on digital credentials. And this is a little picture that shows the fundamental idea, is that we're creating an ecosystem for digital credentials by creating better digital credentials that are actually interoperable. And the core idea is this lifelong comprehensive learner record that's owned and curated by the learner. It helps match achievements to opportunities. So this benefits employers as well as individuals. Now, there's really three standards that kind of go together. You can use the comprehensive learner record on its own. It by itself actually can be used on its own and creates an interoperable ecosystem of digital credentials. But the interoperability and usefulness can be made even better by tying in the Open Badges version 2, which can fit inside a comprehensive learner record, but also using the case standard to connect together the mapping of achievements in these records to various skills frameworks that might be available. And it's really been a very exciting year already for this work, because early this year, in addition to getting a record-breaking turnout to the IMS Digital Credentials Summit in February, actually about 350 people came. And yes, it was in person. It was the last in-person meeting that we had. The very influential American Association of Collegiate Registrars and Admissions Officers, ACRO, made a public endorsement of the IMS CLR. Now, together, IMS and ACRO are now working with universities across the U.S. On adoption strategies. So, okay, now it's time for some Q&A. Only kidding. We can't do Q&A in a recorded webinar. So instead, I wanted to point out to you some of the work on the IMS website, which kind of looks like this. And if you go there, this is actually what the page looks like. It's great to be able to do this on Zoom. I'm actually live on the website right now. You will find on this website all of this stuff that I talked about. You can see an overview of all of the IMS initiatives, digital credential and pathways I just talked about. But in particular, you can drill down on the K-12 digital transformation or the higher ed digital transformation, where many of the things that I talked about here are talked about in more depth. You can see all the work for developers and all the resources for developers that IMS provides. If you're a member in IMS, you get to see more stuff. That's one of the reasons why organizations become members, is they get a deeper view of things. But this will give you some very, very high-level information that you will find very, very, very useful no matter who you are. And of course, you can get over here to the Learning Impact on Demand webinars series that I mentioned. But most importantly, or in addition, if you really want to reinforce some of the things I told you, our annual report is on the website. And here's what it looks like. It says View the IMS Annual Report. And it's very, very, very exciting. It's asking for cookie consent. I'll say accept to that. Okay, it's very, very exciting because it's fully online and it's fully interactive, and you can click around and you can see all the different areas, and including the innovations that have changed EdTech forever and so forth. It's really a great report, and I hope you have fun looking at it and really, really, really enjoying it. So, okay, so with that, it's time for me to say thank you. Let me see if I can stop sharing so you can see my face more fully right now. It's really, really been great talking to you, even if it's only virtually in one way, but I hope everybody stays well. And tell you what, let's do this in person next year, okay? Sounds good, doesn't it? And this is Rob Abel saying bye for now, and let's keep the learning going.
ロブ・アベルよりビデオレターをお届けいたしました。この後、基調講演に移らせていただきますが、予定通りの1時20分の開始とさせていただきたいと思います。皆様、このままお待ちくださいませ。